Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're keeping well. I am Dr. Mercy, your career coach. Today, we'll talk about rethinking, teaching, and learning in the 21st century. And allow me to give you a story of where we have come from. Now, and I want to give the story with myself. I'm a trained teacher and a practicing teacher, of course. Now, my students who I taught in the classroom and also taught at the university are the current teachers. Okay? Are you with me? So there are two persons here, there are two characters here. Me, the teacher coming from the past, or we can call that teacher the traditional teacher, and the current teacher, and of course the current learner. Now you note that the way I taught my student in class is slightly different from the way my student is supposed to teach the current learner. Why? Times are different. Their exposures are very different. The way of thinking is very different. The generations are very, very different. That is to say that the current teacher has quite some work to do. If you're going to be a good teacher in today's classroom, that is, you are teaching current learner, and you're coming from a place of having been taught by the traditional teacher, then you have to be very intentional in just doing yourself afresh, transforming yourself, and learning new skills of teaching, including the skills that you've been taught at the university. Because you are at the university, if your teacher was traditional and did not learn the new way of doing things, it means as a current teacher, you are using the old teacher's skills and competences and way and pedagogy and way of doing things. Allow me to share a bit of characteristics of the traditional teacher. The traditional teacher was excellent. The traditional teacher was very good at disciplining. There were a lot of do's and don'ts. I mean, schools were known by their rules and regulations. I mean, there is a way that students were expected to do life, and it was that way or no way. And the students obeyed because that is all they knew. The teacher was knowledge-based. The teacher could come to class, or some teachers could come to class and teach for 80 minutes. 80 minutes is double lesson with very little activity of the students. Why? Because we were knowledge-based. And that is why teachers emphasized on passing exams. I mean, we needed grade A and nothing else. That is why teachers even stole exam for the students, and parents as well participated in the stealing, in the cheating, so to say. Why? Because there was so much emphasis on the knowledge, so much emphasis on passing exams, so much emphasis on the grade. It was about the grade. You are known to be sharp, you are known to be clever by the grade that you score at the end of the 4 years, or 6 years for that matter. The teacher had very little use of technology. I mean, there are even teachers who resisted learning technology. That is why a teacher would complain about everything. For as long as it touches the technology, the teacher would want to say, no, it is not fair. You know, those kind of stories. Why? Because the traditional teacher used very little technology. And it's not a choice. I mean, not that they really chose to be that way. But the thing is, technology was not there then. In fact, I remember in a marking center, it's at one time, I think we were 2 or 3 who had phones. I mean, telephones. And those days, telephones were, the phones were this big. And as you are carrying it, you are feeling very nice because everybody knows you have a phone. So not that the traditional teacher to a large extent refused technology, but it was not readily available. Today's child ananyamazishwa na simu. As a child, as they get to 3 months, 4 months, wanawekewa cartoon by their parents na wanawekewa hapa kwa masikio. Akiamuka anasikia tu cartoon ikiendelea. I mean, that is the generation. What I'm trying to say is there is that which was done traditionally by the teacher who trained the current teacher. Now, this current teacher is teaching a very, very different crop of students. This crop, today's learner is engaging. Today's learner is very active. Today's learner wants to be involved in everything, including learning. In fact, if you're not careful, you come to class and you're posting how much you know, you'll be embarrassed because you realize that you know so little compared to your students. Some of the things that the teachers teach, students know more than themselves. So today's learner is different. Today's learner knows more. Knows something. They don't come to the table with nothing. They come to the table with something. And they want to use that little that they have. And therefore, today's learner is not instructed. Today's learner is guided, is facilitated. That is why CBE is talking about facilitation. We facilitate the learners to read. So today's learner is quite independent. They want to do what they want, including careers. You not tell your child to become a teacher, become a doctor, become a lawyer. They'll get the A grade. And you as a parent, you want them to do medicine and they will not do it. They don't want because they are independent. They know exactly what they want. Remember, I'm talking about teaching and learning, rethinking teaching and learning in the 21st century. Now, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say for the current teacher to make sense, to be meaningful, and be able to interact well with your learner, you have to be very intentional in aligning yourself to today's pedagogy. There are a few things that you may have learned from your teacher. Remember your high school teacher, your university teacher, your college teacher. There are those things that you may have been taught there that you may have to undo or to unlearn. Why? Because they may not apply in the current classroom. You go to their class, learners are critical thinkers. They are able to reason with you. There are things that you'll tell them and they'll tell you, no, I don't want to work it that way. Today, if you're teaching maths, you have to be very careful. You can't just say this is the way to work it out. It's not the way to work it out. You show them your way and then they might just generate their own way, which is still okay. Why? Because they are critical thinkers. So what I'm trying to say is this. As a current teacher, you have to be transformed. You must allow yourself to transition from the traditional way of thinking, from the way you learned from your teacher. Your teacher was okay, but that was that time. It was not this time. To today. Today's student is a thinker. Today's student is coming with something in their hands. Today's student is tech savvy. Today's learner is independent, and today's learner wants to be engaged. And as you engage them, they will ask you 101 questions. You can't say stop asking. What do you mean? They have to ask because that is their generation. As a teacher, we have to rethink teaching and learning in the 21st century. Toodles, and thank you very much.